Hello and welcome to the program. I'm Layo Adegoke. Let's begin today with stories and happenings that made headlines over the weekend.
On Sunday, thousands of Tunisians protested against President Kais Saied's seizure of almost total political power in the capital, as the growing numbers taken to the streets in recent weeks has raised the risk of the political crisis unleashing unrest. A week after thousands demonstrated in support of Said, the growing numbers raised the possibility of Tunisia's political division spiraling into street confrontations between rival camps. A very heavy police presence stopped any march down in Habib Avenue in central Tunis, but despite some protesters throwing plastic bottles, there were no clashes. Hundreds of migrants gathered outside the UNHCR building in Tripoli on Sunday, demanding evacuation from Libya to Europe. Some migrants held up banners while women sat preparing food for children. One migrant was seen on the ground laying on cardboard.
My message just only, we need every person to help us. We need this country to be in a security place. In Arab country, it has security. And this is my message. Right now we have sick women, sick children.
Libya has hundreds of thousands of migrants, some seeking to travel onwards to Europe and others coming to work in the major oil exporter. On Friday, October 8th, the head of the United Nations Migrant Agency's Libya mission said at least 6 migrants were shot dead at a Tripoli detention center, as many reportedly escaped from the facility and others gathered in nearby streets. Mali's presidency on Saturday said a Colombian nun who was kidnapped in 2017 by Islamist militants in Mali had been freed. Gloria Cecilia was kidnapped by an Al-Qaeda-linked group called the Masina Liberation Front in February 2017 near the border with Burkina Faso. Cecilia was seen smiling as she met with Mali's interim president shortly after her release. Then on Sunday, the nun met with Pope Francis. The Vatican said in a statement that Pope Francis spoke to Sister Gloria just before she said Mass in St. Peter's Basilica to open a 2-year worldwide consultation on the Catholic Church's future.
And also our top stories for today. The trial of 14 people accused of plotting to assassinate Burkina Faso's former president, Thomas Sankara, has started in the country after over 30 years. He was gunned down in one of the most infamous killings in modern African history. The 14 men on trial are accused of complicity in the murder of the man known as Africa's Che Guevara. The charismatic Pan-Africanist was shot dead at the age of 37 by soldiers during a coup on the 15th of October 1987, which saw his close friend Blaise Compaoré come to power. 4 years previously, the pair had staged the takeover, which saw Sankara become president. Mr. Compaoré is among the 14 accused, but he is currently in exile in neighboring Côte d'Ivoire, where he fled after being forced to resign during mass protests in 2014. However, he has repeatedly denied involvement in Sankara's death and is boycotting the trial. Thomas Sankara remains something of an icon across Africa. He brought in radical socialist reforms and was a prominent campaigner for Pan-Africanist causes. Algeria's president says he's demanding total respect from France in the latest escalation of a diplomatic row between the two countries over visas. In his first public comments on the matter, Abdelmajid Tebboune said France should forget that Algeria had once been its colony. Algiers last week recalled its ambassador from Paris because of comments by President Emmanuel Macron attacking the Algerian state. Well, the following day, the French army said that Algeria had banned French military planes from flying over its territory. The current dispute was sparked after France cut the number of visas it issues for citizens of Algeria and other North African countries. It then escalated after President Macron said Algeria was ruled by a political military system with an official history that was based not on truth but on hatred for France. Well, Algeria is not the only country crossed with France. Mali is also doing this, as the Prime Minister, Choguel Kokala Maiga, says he has evidence that France has been training terrorist groups operating in the West African country. The Prime Minister said French troops had created an enclave in Kidal, a town in the desert region of northern Mali, and handed it over to a terrorist group known as Ansar al-Din, allegedly linked to Al-Qaeda. He adds the Malian military has also been banned from entering that territory. Well, this statement comes days after Mali summoned France's ambassador to the country to register its indignation at French President Emmanuel Macron's recent criticism of the country's government, which is dominated by army figures. Security expert David Oto joins us now for more discussions on this. Thank you for speaking to us today.
Thank you very much.
Well, it seems Mali's junta is trying to be legitimate. Yesterday, they rescued a kidnapped nun. Now they are accusing France of training terrorists, which is a very huge accusation. What do you think is the political implications of what the new Malian government is doing?
I think the implication is huge. Layo, as you rightly said, France is having problems everywhere, not just in North Africa, as you mentioned, Algeria, but also recently, I think you remember, France recalling its ambassador from France, due to the nuclear submarine deal that was striking between the US, the UK, and Australia. But now we're talking about Mali, of course. This is a huge accusation, and this is not the first time that the interim prime minister is making such an accusation. I mean, just recently, while he was at the UN, he made a very strong statement against the French government. But again, from a different angle, because he said France had abandoned the security situation in Mali, and he used the word, they were left mid-air. Now, the same accusation is being made, but on a different platform, which was the Russian RT. And significantly, you've got to understand that Russia also have a very strong stake, as there's been recent reports that Russia is trying to sign a unilateral agreement in terms of propping up security in the region. So what we've seen, again, it's not the first time that we've heard that French have also been actually propping up militias in Kidal, which is close to the triangle of the Liptako-Goma, which has a border between Mali, Burkina Faso, and Niger. So I think this is a very strong accusation because it puts France in a very delicate position. I mean, if the French government is saying that it is fighting against Al-Qaeda and ISIS-linked jihadist groups in the region, and it is the same government being accused of actually training them or actually supporting these groups and propping them up against the government, then it sends a very strong political statement that the French is no longer wanted. And I think the scale down of Operation Barkhane has been a trigger point. France is suffering tremendously in terms of its reputation in Mali. And with the interim government making this accusation, I don't see how much France can have support in that region.
Well, you've touched on my next question, and which is how credible could this information be, and who then investigates to, find out if this is true? Because like you've rightly said, France has always been supporting the fight against insurgency in the Sahel, having troops on ground with training and all. But now this accusation taints their work.
Let me tell you how credible it is. If the Malian prime minister or the interim prime minister is accusing the French government of, sponsoring militias and terrorist organizations, then that's the only credibility you need. Mali is a sovereign state. It may be under some kind of an interim government, which came as a result of the military coup d'etat. But you cannot get any more evidence than the prime minister saying that a foreign force, which signed a bilateral agreement with it, to protect itself against jihadist organizations, is in turn, training those organizations and supporting militias on the ground. That is the only evidence you need. But again, as I mentioned, we have spoken to sources on ground who made the same statement. that there are militias, especially in Kidal, that are being propped up by the French, and that the Malian government or the Malian military has no access into this region. I mean, it's unforgivable, to think that a sovereign government will not have access to part of its own territory. That itself, sends a very strong message. Why don't they have that access into that region? And I mean, the simple answer comes from the Prime Minister, and he's saying, as we all heard, very clearly, that the French is aligning itself with Ansar Dine, which, is one of those terrorist groups that are linked to Al-Qaeda. There is no further evidence than that.
Well, we know there has been tension between both countries and even France with Algeria, especially because some of the comments made by, President Macron. But how does one reconcile this, a diplomatic row between these nations? Is that beneficial at this time, especially because that region is still very volatile?
Indeed, the region is very volatile. But the way that you reconcile the security situation in Mali is to advocate for the interests of Malians. Malians have to be able to take the primary responsibility to ensure that there is stability within Mali. If France is seen as, as acting contrary to its promises in terms of protecting the population, in terms of, its counterinsurgency mission, then there is no reason why Mali should continue to have them. I mean, there is a new Operation Takuba, which is the European Union mission, which has been launched. The French are also involved in that. So what I think, the best way to reconcile this is for both countries to sit down and, have a serious disclosure. But again, the onus lies on Mali. They have to make the final decision. The French can no longer be in Mali if the Malians are saying they are propping up militias and terrorist organizations. This is contrary to the sovereignty of the Malian state. And again, I would always advocate for the people of Mali to make that decision.
Ben, thank you so much, security expert David Otto.
Thank you.
The African Union says it wants to extend and expand its military operations in Somalia, where AU troops have been fighting Islamist militants for 14 years. The AU said the new mission would be run jointly with the United Nations. It also says the expanded AMISOM force would include soldiers from other African countries. The plan needs to be endorsed by the UN and also the Somali government, which has previously rejected AU proposals. Ethiopia, which contributes thousands of soldiers to AMISOM, is facing serious security challenges at home. Kenya is also reported to be considering a military drawdown. To political stories now, the Ugandan government has withdrawn treason charges against the opposition leader Kizza Besigye, a veteran challenger and critic of President Yoweri Museveni's 35-year rule. Besigye, a four-time presidential candidate, was arrested and charged with treason in 2016 for staging a ceremony at which he declared himself president following that year's general election. Once President Museveni's personal physician, Besigye fell out with the president in 1999 after describing the ruling party as dishonest, opportunistic, and undemocratic. Every October 11 marks the International Day of the Girl Child to recognize girls' rights and the unique challenges girls face around the world. The International Day of the Girl Child focuses attention on the need to address the challenges girls face and to promote girls' empowerment and the fulfillment of their human rights. Well, the theme for this year's International Day of the Girl Child 2021 is Digital Generation, Our Generation. The day also aims to promote girls' rights and highlights gender equalities that remain between girls and boys. Well, in many African regions, girls are systematically denied the same rights as men and boys. Sexual exploitation and discrimination are part of the many challenges females face. Adetoun Tade is the president of the International Visitors Leadership Program, one of the U.S. exchange programs that help promote societal impact and development in the country. She joins us now from Surulere in Lagos, where she and other leaders, alongside the Deputy Public Affairs Officer at the U.S. Consulate, Jennifer Foltz, are overseeing a program marking today the International Day of the Girl Child. Adetoun, thank you for joining us on the program today.
Thank you for having me. Good evening.
Well, let's begin with the program you have been at today. Talk to us about the IVLP's involvement with programs regarding the girl child.
Okay, one of the fundamental reasons that we have the IVLP is to impact our society and give back from the wealth of experience and wealth of exposure that we have. And the issue of girl child is one that we take very seriously because especially this year's theme, digital generation, our generation, in the world of tech, we still need a lot of female involvement, and it's better, to encourage them from a very young age to, allow the girls to dream big, dream wild, and know that the same opportunity available for the boys is also available to the girls as well.
Well, speaking of the theme, how do you interpret this year's theme? Like you've mentioned, digital generation, our generation.
It's really so interesting because the world is going digital. Everybody's on social media, one app or the other is coming out every day, and we need to embrace it as early as possible that the world is turning digital. And there's every reason or every need to encourage the girl child to be part of it, to step in, not to see it as the men's world, but to see it as women's world as well as our world. It's really, really important. It's not enough to just, waste time away on the internet, waste time away on the social media. There's a lot we can do. There's a lot we can achieve. And that's why we're encouraging the girl child to jump in. It's not a man's world anymore. It is our world, male or female. And we see that the girl child still need more encouragement, which is why we encourage, because most of them are talented. Most of them are, they have super brains. So it's not enough to just encourage them lightly. It is more than enough to encourage them intensely so that they can, come out strong.
Well, every year we draw attention to issues concerning the girl child. Apparently, we've yet to make enough impact. What needs to change, so that the girl child is well aware of her rights and society that's providing the enabling environment for the girl child to thrive?
For us, we believe that it's time that we get very intentional. It's not enough to pay lip service, organize a program, or talk about it once in a year. October 11, we talk about it and we're done. No, it is time for us to be intentional in the things we expose as parents and caregivers or as the generation ahead. It's time to be intentional in what we and expose our girls to. We have to be intentional in the kind of encouragement, motivation, and exposure that we give them so that everything can sum up to the kind of women, to the kind of mothers that they ought to be.
All right, then, Adetoun Tade, President of the International Visitors Leadership Program, thank you for speaking to us.
Thank you for having me.
Prosecutors in Egypt have ordered the arrest of 3 people following the dumping of thousands of unused doses of a coronavirus vaccine near the city of Minya, south of Cairo. The authorities say nearly 20,000 doses of the Chinese-made Sinopharm vaccine with a value of more than $300,000 had been allocated to the Minya Health Directorate but had gone to waste after being stored at the wrong temperature. Only about 11% of the Egyptian population has received the first COVID-19 jab, with about 6% being fully vaccinated. Well, as a way of enhancing COVID-19 vaccine production in Africa, governments should be able to create a level playing ground for manufacturers. And this is according to a public health physician, Dr. Akiala Ishaku, who says there should be a focus on producing vaccines for other diseases, not just COVID-19. Currently, South Africa, Algeria, and Egypt are the African countries taking the lead on vaccine production.
Having a vaccine biotechnology plant in the country is it's a duty of the government to provide a level playing ground. So I expect that by now we would have had a presidential vaccine initiative, not only for COVID-19, but a lot of vaccine preventable diseases. We discovered that in the early 50s and 60s, Nigeria was producing yellow fever vaccine for West African countries, but we lost it in 1991 due to shared reasons. And so in all countries of the world, even in South Africa, in the Algeria that you mentioned, and even in Egypt and Senegal, government just provide a level playing ground for private sectors to come in and to establish vaccine plans. So it is my earnest desire that as a country, the government should be able to come up with a vaccine policy that will give an enabling playing ground that is sustainable and accountable for the people. I think once we have our vaccination plan in-house in the country, Nigerian citizens will trust vaccine produced in-house more than even the jabs coming outside the country. Because there are a lot of heresy regarding COVID-19 vaccines that are produced outside the country. So I strongly believe having produced other vaccines in-house is going to save costs, it's going to become more affordable, and then Nigeria is going to become a vaccine production hub for West Africa and sub-region.
In South Sudan, about 120 school pupils have been hospitalized after a deworming exercise by public health officials led them to falling ill. Local media reports that the children were allegedly given expired tablets or an overdose, but this was denied by the health ministry. Preliminary findings showed that the drug might have been given on an empty stomach to some of the children who developed side effects such as abdominal pain, dizziness, and headaches. Well, the exercise was carried out in several schools in Iba County in western equatorial states, that's southwest of the country. Some 700 children aged between 5 and 16 were given the tablets. Most of those affected were from Iba Girls Primary School, and it's unclear why it was the most affected school. An investigation into the sexual exploitation and abuse allegations against UN Gabonese contingents in the Central African Republic is now underway. Spokesperson for the UN Secretary General, Stefan Dujarric, announced that the UN and Gabonese authorities have started the probe jointly with the UN's Office of the Internal Oversight Services and also with the support of the UN Senior Victims' Rights Advocates in the Central African Republic.
Abuse allegations concerning the Gabonese contingent that had been serving in the Central African Republic under the UN flag. The national investigation by the Gabonese authorities is underway jointly with the UN's Office of Internal Oversight Services and with the support of the UN Senior Victim Rights Advocate in the Central African Republic. 32 victims, including 8 children, have been identified through preliminary investigations. Incidents allegedly took place at various points in time from 2014 up until this year, 2021. The allegations involve a total of 51 alleged perpetrators, the identities of whom are still unknown pending the results of the investigation. A total of 11 paternity claims have been recorded with this allegation, where either the child has been born or the victims is currently pregnant. Ensuring victims' well-being and assistance is our utmost priority. All identified victims have been referred to UN for assistance according to our protocols.
And that's it on the program for today. Thank you for watching. I'm Layo Adigoke.